Hello everyone and welcome back to the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage. You are looking at the left side of my Necchi Supernova. This is a machine I picked up, gosh, quite a while ago, maybe even a year ago. There's been a big slowdown in the sewing machine restorations, largely due to all of the lockdowns and the social distancing. Ironically, there's a big demand for sewing machines, but I sold most of those that I had, and this was one I got with, I think I met someone outdoors in a parking lot and picked it up. But of course it is a Necchi. It is from the golden age of Necchis, and it's hard to say no. So this machine, of course, is the successor, one of the successors, to the BU Mira and the BU Novas that I've shown before. And they have a different shape, a different design, but there are also some things that are quite similar, right? They didn't just, chuck everything, which is kind of a nice thing. So I'm showing you this from this side. You will notice, if you've never seen this before, Necchi is one of the only companies that ever put in an indicator for the pressure adjustment, the pressure spring for the pressure bar. And as all of you know, with any machine, you have you can adjust the pressure, of the pressure bar where your sewing foot attaches to. And this allows you to control how much pressure is placed on the material. It'll depend on the weight of the material and the type. We won't go into that today. But this was rather innovative in its day. Most machines, if they have the adjustment, you adjust it, and you kind of had to eyeball it and do the best you could by feel. And many people did fine with those. I've used many machines before, and you just get a feel for the pressure, and it's not a problem. But how nice of a convenience for Necchi to provide this to its customer. And it has a little number dial, and they may have even had, I'll have to go back and look at the manual. There may even be an indication in the manual about where you might want it set depending on what you're sewing. Very nice to have. Now when I pull this out, it's kind of stiff, and you'll see here there's a little, I'm going to have to lubricate this so it uses a tension piece of, it's like a clip really, and it uses tension to hold the door still. Now when you start looking at this, let's see if we'll get enough natural light here to show you guys. It's rather interesting. There's a lot more going on than you would normally see, certainly in a straight stitch machine. There's just a lot more moving parts, lots of, there's a lot here that you're used to seeing, and yet a lot of things going on. If I adjust my needle position, right, notice I can pull back. It's a little stiff. I've got to lubricate it. One of the things you may not be able to tell in this light, I think you can, which is this. Whoever oiled this machine in the past either oiled it like almost every square inch where they didn't really need to, or it could just be the kind of oil they had. Maybe this machine sat in an attic. I don't know. I doubt it, because it would be frozen solid if it had been. But this is a good place to point out to you guys, and you're going to see even more of this when I do. We'll do a different video looking underneath the machine. But there's a lot of varnish. Now when I say varnish, what am I talking about? I use the term varnish to describe this old, dried, oxidized sewing machine oil. Okay, a lot of times it will appear as yellowing. You can see here this sort of amber yellowed look to the paint, which you don't see over here. And there's a lot of it on this machine. And so when I go to clean the machine, the most important thing is to be sure that any of this varnish is not on a moving part, right? So you can see there's some here, right? Because that is what can cause a machine to freeze, and even if it's not frozen, it's going to take away the power of the machine, right? You're asking the machine to work extra hard for no good reason, and that's not necessary. So anytime you have parts that move against each other, you want to make sure that you don't have old oil, and you want to get the old stuff removed as best you can. Now up here at the top, you may notice I've got to adjust the needle plate. We'll do that in a different place. But this needle bar, when it goes down, it stops right here. And you can see, because you can see this is cleaner, this shaft that moves up and down is cleaner than the very top. So if I've got my trusty cotton swabs here and a little alcohol, and you can see the old gummed up oxidized oil coming off, right? It is no longer useful, and we want to get that off as best you can, okay? And you come around the back. We're not going to disassemble the machine to do that, but you can pretty much get most of it off here. And a lot of this at the top, you could say, well, that was cosmetic, because it wasn't really affecting the operation of the machine. This is very subjective in terms of how much you clean, how much you remove. We've talked about this before when we were talking about the inside of this machine, or any machine for that matter. I'm of the opinion that inside the machine, what matters is moving parts that move against each other. If I have any old oil here, right, you can see a bunch of it came off. Some of it's dirt, but some of it's just old oil. But it's turned into a kind of a hard film, right? Kind of a sticky film. And now for the pieces that show, the pieces that you see, you definitely want to try to get those cleaned up, because that's aesthetics, right? You want your machine to look gorgeous, and why wouldn't you? But for things that are inside, that are not seen, if they're not mechanical, if the old oil has no interference with mechanics and performance of the machine, if it's aesthetic, you don't have to clean this, because this is not visible unless you want to, okay? Some people will often, a lot of times when they get an old machine, they'll look at it, it's like, oh no, it's rusted, I need to get the rust off. But this is not rust. It can trick you, because sometimes if the oil darkens, if it gets really dark, typically the old oil is a tad bit more amber yellow than rust is, but it's awfully close. Okay, I've been tricked myself, and you might too when you're looking at it. So again, don't assume that your machine has rust, but don't assume it doesn't, right? So how do you know? Well, if this were rust, one of the things that you might notice is that while some rust will certainly, if it's loose, it'll come off with a cotton swab and alcohol, but usually all of it won't, and you'll have to polish it with a metal polish, and sometimes like an emery cloth, very fine, wet, dry sand paper to get the rust out. There's also metal polishes. We've covered that in other videos. But if it's old oil and it's on a metal, like a nickel-plated surface like this, all of the old oil should come off. You shouldn't have a lot of staining that 100%, 99% isopropyl alcohol should remove it, okay? And again, don't spray anything on this. Certainly don't spray alcohol, because you're going to get overspray, and you're going to really cause damage to your paint finishes. You don't want to do that. Cotton swabs are your friend. Typically, as long as you don't dunk them in there and they're not swimming in the alcohol. The cotton swabs do a pretty decent job of holding on to liquids. Nothing's perfect, but I typically don't worry when I have alcohol that's in my cotton swab. And that's one of the reasons you see me use so many of these. So again, this is parts that don't move against metal are aesthetic. So what are we going to do? The first thing we want to make sure is there any dust in here, right? I don't actually see much of any dust. Sometimes you'll get a lot of dust that builds up in here. It really depends on the type of fabrics someone was sewing with. If you're not sure, one of the things you can do is you can just simply, blow some air in there in here. There are sections of the machine I don't typically like to use canned air, because you just end up moving dust and dirt into places you can't get to it. So that's not good. And I've covered in other videos, you can use vacuum cleaners. I have a little attachment set, accessories that go to my shop vac, and it works quite well to remove a lot of the big heavy dust. Anything that's loose, that's not stuck to the machine, should come off with vacuuming. But for something like, and you can I vacuum side compartments like this as well, needle bar compartments, whatever you want to call it. So anyway, what I want to do with this particular area is I want to get it lubricated. Now, I've already removed the lid before, and I don't really need to do that again, but let's see. Want to make sure I remember what it was that what did I actually lubricate the last time when we had the top off. And then I want to get the rest of this all lubricated and oiled up. Again, I start, at the top, work my way down. You don't have to, but you may find that if you don't, you will clean parts of the machine, and then dust and grime will fall onto your cleaned areas because gravity works. So anyway, it's just a suggestion, and it could make your life easier and help prevent you from having to re-clean something you've already cleaned. That wouldn't be fun. Okay, so we're going to take a look at, I think I'm going to take the lid off again, because I can't remember if I did. I know I did a lot of the oiling up in this section, but I honestly don't remember. So we'll do it again for the benefit of the video as well. Okay, so I'm going to lift the little hatch here. On this particular model, and it will vary, you can't just say, oh, well, every Necchi machine, the lid comes off the same way. When they changed designs, they changed how things got removed. So I'm going to lift up here and simply pull, and now I've got my lid off. That was pretty easy. Now, I'm going to get my flashlight to make sure we can see what the heck we're doing. Let me turn in the natural light a little bit more. Sort of in the afternoon here today. Okay, guys, got my flashlight here. And what do I need now? I need my sewing machine oiler. Okay, so what do I want to do from up here? First thing I want to check, I want to get a better view to see what's going on. Do I have any dirt or grime or dust that I want to move? Again, you don't have to do it in this order, but if you do, you might save yourself some time because the dust and the grime is going to fall. And yes, sure enough, there is some. Not a ton. And I'm surprised this much of it is loose. You can see some of it just coming out there, which is, there's a lot of oil here. Whoever oiled the machine before kind of went a little overboard. It's okay, as long as you don't get anything into anything electrical, you don't want it in the motor. If you use too much oil in your feed dog area, you will you'll want to have that excess drip out before you sew anything precious, right? Take some old scraps of fabric and get that out of there, because sewing machine oil should wash out of clothes or fabric, but it's oil, so you take the chances you want to take with this, but I think it would just be a lot easier if a little more lint than I thought. It really is easier if you just try to get it get it out as best you can, and make sure you don't have too much oil in your machine. These machines don't have oil tanks. Some of the industrials do, and I touched on that when I showed you guys what was it? I had a big straight lock stitch industrial, and the big gold one. It weighed about what a motorboat does, or excuse me, a boat motor, I should say. Now, you want to get any loose dust out of here, because once you start oiling, that oil will combine with any loose dust and it will create a kind of mud, and your machine will not like it, and neither will you. So again, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure here. Okay, I've got... Let's see here. I don't see any real loose dust left in here. So I am going to, what am I going to do here? I want to come up top, just kind of get, looks like there's some kind of goop or grime or who knows what. You can see sometimes people don't know what part of a machine to oil, so they may have oiled here. Now there is a place to put sewing machine oil, but it looks like it's just, oil is a magnet for dirt and dust, and that's just the way it goes. And so the more oil you have, the more chance you will also have for dirt and dust to stick to your machine. So I'm just getting the excess here. I'm not being, again, I'm not polishing this. The lid covers all of this, but I want it to be clean where parts move. Function is really important. So I'm going to start at the top, and there's an actual hole here that I can put, see my oiler, put oil into. I want to put some right here where my threads are, because remember you can see it moving. Actually, I want to put it right here. And there's a threaded piece here. It's not always easy to see on sewing machines, but I'm going to show that to you guys. And it's actually, where's my pointer? Here's my screwdriver. It's right here, right? And if I turn, this is, my thumb is right up the adjuster for the pressure. You can see the bolt moving, and there's a spring attached. This bolt may never have gotten much oil, I don't know, but we're going to make sure it does. It will appreciate it, because metal on metal needs oil, lubrication. That's true in all sorts of machines, and definitely in sewing machines of this caliber in the vintage era when you had sewing machines made with metal. Okay, now what else do I want to accomplish down here? I'm seeing a little bit more dust I want to get out of this area before I start getting things all wet with oil. We even got some old oil built up on my tension assembly up here. Again, I have gotten to the point these days where I can actually tell if someone put oil in a place they shouldn't. There should not be any oil put into the tension assembly from out here. Now, when it's disassembled, that's different. I consider this, the assembly design you're looking at, this was not the first Necchi assembly design. I've seen this mostly on Necchis. A few FOFs used it. It is one of the most refined, and I would imagine very expensive tension assemblies ever created. They are amazing. Not only are they accurate, just turning them, it's like handling a piece of jewelry. It's just humbling. You know, you guys have heard me talk about this for years, and I still do. It still never ceases to amaze me, the quality that went into something that was a consumer item. Again, not a piece of industrial equipment, but a consumer product. Most of us are lucky if we get any consumer product we buy to last any amount of time, you know, and we become resigned to the fact, sadly, that, you know, we can't have things of quality, or if we can, they were made in the old days, so we have to find someone to fix them, and thus the channel here, because it's not always easy. Sometimes you can find a sewing dealer that will try to work on these, but very often they won't. Very often they don't know how, right? They may not be familiar with them. So here you see I'm just turning the hand wheel over here. You can see my hand. And just, again, just looking for things that move. I can look at the service manual. I have one for this. And that would be fine. But, you know, I can actually just see all the moving parts. You know, I can see where metal moves against metal. And it is just amazing. If you can imagine producing just produce the parts, the quality of the steel is it's just remarkable. You know, it's a bygone era, and it sounds like a little piece that I missed here, a little piece of lint. It's a bygone era. You know, when you sometimes would hear people say they don't make them like they used to. That is most definitely true with sewing machines. But it's also true of a lot of things, you know. It's true of a lot of other consumer products. Appliances. Some of you may know someone who has an old freezer or an old refrigerator, and it was made in 1950, which would make it about 70 years old, and it still runs. Now, all of the refrigerators made back then, for example, they're not all running, obviously, or there would be tons of them still out there. But when you see something like that, you realize that that's probably not going to happen with some of the newer consumer products you have. It would be nice, you know, never say never, but I'm not very optimistic that they will be running 70 years from now. That would be pretty shocking if they did. Okay, so I started looking in from the top. I wanted to kind of get, you know, my view up here. Now I'm going to come around to the side to see, to make sure that I'm not missing anything, right? Now, don't forget, guys, that, you know, right now you're seeing me concentrate on this up and down motion, very important, to make sure it's lubricated. But we're not done here yet. Try not to run over my tripod as I do this. Okay, now, remember, this is a zigzag machine, as I've mentioned before. The zigzag movement on any vintage machine, especially Necchi's, because they were built so tightly and so beautifully in a sense that you get almost no vibration out of a Necchi. So it's a good thing, but it can be problematic if they've sat for a long time. I was very lucky. This machine was not frozen. I kind of thought it would be, but it wasn't. Now, over here, I'm touching this is the lever. It's spring-loaded. I'm touching the lever that affects zigzag, right? Now, when you guys move something like this, take care. I know these machines were built with a lot of robust construction, but this is spring-loaded, okay? And it's a very strong spring, but you know, don't let it slam back, okay? Be gentle. It's, you know, this machine is, what is it? 65 years old. Did I get that right? 1950, what is this, 57? Okay, it's old, right? It's over 60 years old. So give it a break. You know, be a little more kind to it than you might if it were brand new. I think you should be kind to anything that you own. Someone paid really good money for this machine when it was new. Okay, so we've got this going, okay? Now, what you'll see is, and this is another thing you guys want to look at. Sometimes you'll have a zigzag component to a machine stuck, but you don't even know where it is. How do I know what to address if I can't tell what's going on? On this machine, it's a little easier to spot just because of the way it was constructed. You see this shaft right here, okay? It's a horizontal shaft right here. It goes from here to here. And watch what happens when I turn. I've got my thumb on the zigzag lever. Notice it moves, right? This whole assembly moves, it pivots, and notice it's like a plunger. This cylinder, or the shaft, drive shaft, is moving in. This is a very common place where you can get sticking. Now, what do? Well, I've got my cotton swab here. I've got some of my 99% isopropyl, and I'm going to start doing this, okay? Now, what am I doing? You say, well, great, it doesn't look that dirty. You're cleaning it with the alcohol, so what? How's that going to help? Well, what it can do is it can introduce the alcohol and let the alcohol start to work its way. The alcohol's a liquid, right? And hopefully, fingers crossed, what we want to have is some of this alcohol to sort of get down into the crevices. Not easy on the Necchi. Necchis are built really tight. But that's our goal here. And if we're careful, and let's say you have one of these and it's stuck, and that's very common. Like I said, I just assumed this was going to be stuck, and I was so grateful it wasn't. But when it is, you need to be patient. I've talked about this before. Patience is a virtue, and it definitely is when it comes to restoring vintage sewing machines. So let the alcohol sit. It's going to dry quickly, but it'll start to soften old oil, because what happens is you end up with old oil on the inside of where the shaft is going. You can't reach inside there. It's like a cylinder, right? And over here, I don't know that this is moving into a sleeve or a cylinder or a bushing, but that's what this is. Let's let that do it. Now, once the alcohol can do its magic, there are other things. You can try penetrant oils, 3-in-1 oil, which is not sewing machine oil. Never use it as a lubricant, but it can be a good penetrating oil, and there are others. You guys have heard me talk about those before. Now, you can also apply heat. You can do it with a hair dryer if you don't have a heat gun. Sometimes it's good that you don't have a heat gun because a heat gun is very easy to lose control over and you can damage yourself and your machine. So I use a heat gun, but I'm very respectful of it. And fortunately, I do not have to do that here, but you would want to concentrate some heat here, and the heat would eventually, you know, work its way into a place where maybe there's old oil, right? So I definitely want this lubricated right here. Very important, because whenever I do zigzag, I want my metal, as it moves against the metal, I want it to be happy, and it will be very happy if it's lubricated. Why? Because that's how it was engineered to work. That's how automobiles, to this day, you have to have motor oil for those moving metal parts, or you quickly don't have an engine. So that's what I've done. You'll notice here I'm leaving this oil. I'm not going to go in and start moving this oil out here and out of the way, because that's not the purpose of this. This is not a museum piece. This is a vintage machine that was built to last, and we want it to run again. Now, if I have a client who comes to me with a museum piece and says, I want you to just everything, I want no spec, right? Then I'm happy to do that, but that takes, it could literally take, I don't know, 5-6 times as many hours, and it would cost, the cost would be exorbitant, but it just depends on what you want. Some people say, I don't care what it costs, fix it, make it right, make it how I want it. I want you to clean every spec, and I can do that, actually, they could do that, but they don't want to, obviously. So if it's your machine, guys, you decide, okay? But don't feel like you have to go in and clean you can see down here, there's some old varnish I've gotten. You can see when I pull on it, and I've got some of the liquid oil, and it's starting to break up some of that. But this is not dust. It should not be, it won't get into the workings of the moving parts of the machine, and it's not really going to hurt anything. And when we get underneath, I'll show you guys where sometimes having old oil on parts that are not moving and not critical for performance and function can actually be your friend. So anyway, thanks for watching. Before I finish, I'm going to take a little bit of grease and I'm going to put it right here. I could put oil, but I actually prefer grease. And what you'll see, I'll have to show this to you guys. Okay, guys, I want to show you where I'm going to put this grease. It's so little grease, I could almost just put some on my finger and put it in there. It's not hard. Okay, I'm going to zoom in, and I want you to see this, because it's not always obvious. It's kind of funny. You'll stare at something for a long time. It's like, well, what is he talking about? You see this. This is a piece of steel. It is bolted to the chassis. It's pretty rigid, this piece. This piece here, it's like a little latch. And notice when I push down on it, it moves. Okay? It's like a flexible piece of steel. I suspect it's actually thinner than this piece, right? When this piece comes over, it's going to, what is it going to do? It's going to dovetail and sort of what's that? You learn that when you learn plate tectonics in geography class years ago. It's going to come underneath this piece, and they're going to kind of hold each other together. You see here and here. I don't really have a good angle because as it closes, you'll lose that spot. So let me show you where you want to apply this grease. This is, I don't know what I'm looking for here. I didn't know if I had any dirt. I'm just checking, make sure I don't have any dirt or oxidation or rust. I don't see any, but you never know, because this is a place that gets scraped. Okay, so now I'm going to take my grease, and all I want is just a little dab, right? Grandpa used to say, a little dab will do you. I think it's an old advertising slogan from something that men used to put in their hair. Real cream, maybe? Anyway, so I probably don't even need this much, okay? Now watch. Okay, it still is taut. It still has a tension on it. It could be that this is even adjustable. If I wanted it to not be so taut, I could probably, you have to kind of give a little effort to open this, right? So, well, let's see. I don't remember if this is adjustable. All right, that may not have moved. Okay, I see a slot here, but it looks like it's all the way down. Let's see if I can, move it any. Wasn't really planning on even talking about it. I'd forgotten it. Okay, so I'm going to loosen this. So what do I want to do? I want to come down, if it will move down, right? Notice I can get it to move up, but in that case, my God, it might not even close. Well, I don't know. We'll see. Let's see if I come up with it. No, it's designed for this piece to come over the top. So let's go all the way down, and then we'll snug up our, push down on this so it doesn't want to wiggle. Parts will want to wiggle on you sometimes. Okay, so I'm going to take and I'm just going to snug up my screw here. Okay, we're not torquing it down. It's not a lug nut on a car wheel. Just snug. That's good. Okay, I've got the grease. Boom. Okay, good enough. All right, that's a small point. You might say, oh, who cares? It actually can make your life a little bit easier because when you go to open this at some point. Okay, so we have lubricated the top of the machine. We've lubricated the side of the machine. And then next video, I'll show you guys the underbelly and why there are times when not removing old oil is actually helpful for your machine. Thanks for watching, everyone. We will see you in the next video. Welcome back, everybody. This is the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage. You are looking, or about to be looking at, my Necchi Supernova. This is a video where I want to talk to you about the underside of the machine. And I thought this was a good place to kind of remind us all that when you turn a machine over, okay, when you're going to put it on its back side, before you do anything, you really want to, let's change the angle here and I'll show you what I mean. You really want to inspect the back of your machine. What do I mean by that? Let's get a little closer and let's see what we can do here. What I'm talking about is, here is the back of my machine, okay? Some machines have motors that hang on the back without a cover, unlike this Necchi. Some machines have spool pin shelves that kind of jut out. Sometimes they have a light fixture that, you know, a lot of the old Singers and other machines, the Japanese clones, they have light fixtures here. And your machine is not lightweight. If it's a vintage machine from what I call heirloom quality, it's going to be a lot of metal. It's a heavy object. And don't forget also your side door, guys. Don't forget, this door is very vulnerable. This one is fairly beefy, but never mind. Any side compartment door is vulnerable to damage by simply laying your machine over. They can't support the weight. Their hinges are little tiny things. So make sure that you know that your machine is going to have clearance back here. Now today, in order to turn my machine back, I've taken, these are some old pillowcases. You don't have to have anything fancy. You can take up fabric, old rags rolled up, whatever you have. You can try boxes, but you got to be careful. You don't want the machine to slip. Now when I set the machine back, I'm doing it carefully. It's very heavy. I don't want it to slam it, okay? And I also need enough clearance. I got to move this back so that it's going to rest on my little rag pile, my rag roll, whatever you want to call it, pillowcase roll. Now, why did I do this? I want to support the weight of the machine. Now I'm going to lower. So now I have lowered the machine down onto its backside. And if I come around here, you'll be able to see what I've done. So this machine is not resting on anything that's going to be damaged, okay? Most of the weight is on the neck and the back body, and I had this out here so you could see. So it's basically being braced, if you will, by my little pile. It's nice and soft. It's not going to scratch it, and it shouldn't really slip off unless I, go crazy moving the machine around. And it's, the machine is in a safe place. I'm sure there are people who've had beautiful machines that were perfect, and they were trying to work on them, and they really screwed them up because they weren't paying attention to what they were doing. So what do I have here? By the way, I don't know if anyone's asked, but this little pad, you can use anything. You can use a piece of cardboard. The table, this is a laminate desk, and it's a little hard. I don't think, you can certainly put a metal machine down on one, but I like having a little something soft. I think this little pad, I think it came from like a Bed Bath & Beyond place, and it's used to put, strained dishes on or something. Find something, okay? You don't, Just find something that your machine is going to be comfortable on. And the good thing about something like this is if you drop a screw or part, hopefully it's not going to bounce like it would on the hard surface and go flying like that screwdriver just did. And then you're going to have to be crawling around on the floor looking for it. So save yourself some grief there. And again, you don't need to spend a lot of money. There's nothing fancy about it. And you're good to go. It's kind of like a work mat. Let's see if I can lower this down. Okay, that's better. Now, what are we looking at? We are looking at the underside of the Necchi Supernova. This, again, was the second, not the second. This was a design that Necchi came out with after the BU Nova and Mira models. It looks different. Mechanically, it is somewhat different. It still uses, like the Mira, it uses this electronic magic box, which has a number of capacitors in it to control the flow of electricity, to give you control over the motor speed. State of the art in the late 1950s, guys. A lot of these end up going bad. Not all of them. Some of them still work. The one on my BU Mira that I use for myself still works. But if yours does, consider yourself lucky. But in another video, I'm going to talk to you guys. There's a way to use your Necchi without having to use this box, because I have tried to get capacitors for them. I can't find them. They're gone with the wind. And so what are we doing? What do we got here? Okay, now that I'm at the bottom, I'm going to come here, and I don't have my vacuum out today. I thought I'd just take my trusty lint brush, and I'm going to come in here and just kind of come across. I've got my flashlight. If you don't have a flashlight, I really suggest getting one. I've shown you guys the one I have. The reason my hands are free is because I have it. It's on my head like a miner's lamp or something. It's awesome because it really frees your hands. But whatever works for you is fine. Just have something, because it's not easy to see here. And I've got beautiful daylight. We're getting into summertime here. And I've got a number of pieces of hardware here that need to be lubricated, but I want to show this to you guys. What's another thing we can do? We know we're going to need to clean the shuttle area. Just assume that you will. You might get lucky, but normally no. I've just taken out, or attempted to take out, my bobbin case. And as I have mentioned to you guys in the past, when you have a bobbin case, and hopefully you have scissors, I'm looking for mine. When you have a bobbin case that still has thread in it, never ever pull. You'll notice, here's my bobbin, it fell out, no big deal, that's pretty common. Don't pull your bobbin and your thread out backwards from the way it went in. Your bobbin case does not appreciate it. It will be offended and hurt, and you will not like the result. Okay? What do? Of course, you pull the thread out in the same direction you put it in, and the bobbin case will be happy, and so will you. Happier. Okay, where are we? I want to go ahead and come around. Now this bobbin case area, this is the hook. I took the case out, and I have my lovely, beautifully machined aluminum Necchi bobbins. How lovely are those? Okay, I'm going to, this particular hook system and shuttle system has a cover right here, and it gets released by simply doing this. Earlier designs, this is an oscillating hook, and Singer invented it, the amazing engineers at Singer. Over the years, they would make it, some of the earlier Singers, you have to come in with a screwdriver and undo the screws. No big deal, it's fine. But this is kind of a quick release piece, and you'll notice I just literally brought it right out. And then it hangs. They even put this little clip in here so that I can hang it. I don't even have to take it all the way out. Now, I've got some threads in here I'm going to have to deal with. Here's my hook. Go ahead and get that out there, because we're going to clean these. Who knows how long they've been cleaned. And this is a magnificent machine. It deserves maintenance. If you want something that's completely maintenance free, and actually I don't think there is in the sewing machine world, there may not be anything that's super maintenance free, but let's see, I've got thread. Where's this thread at? I've got a thread. Oh, okay. There's a thread still left in my needle. What's going on here? Okay. You get wild threads here, guys. It's just part of the sewing machine world. New machine or old, that's just how it goes. This plate still slides so beautifully, in spite of the fact that it, nothing in here has been cleaned or lubricated in a while. Here's a little piece of thread. Look at this. Now, when I tell you cleaning out your machine is important, there's a reason. Here's a little thread remnant. It's not uncommon to see this, but you do not want this getting into your shuttle system. It can cause you a world of unhappiness, and it's not necessary. Good maintenance will help prevent most of these problems. Now, I want to come in here, and I'm going to go ahead and take my lint brush. Accessing this is actually a lot simpler than some machines. I will give it to the Necchi engineers on that. And I want to come in here and I want to make sure I don't have any dust bunnies, no strange, rogue thread pieces that are going to come in here and cause problems. Typically, Singer featherweights and Singer 301s are more prone to get thread wrapped around here. And so what? There are those are wonderful machines in their own right. They're so incredible. You just know that, and you know to look. That's certainly not a reason not to use one of those machines. They're incredible. Okay, I am going to poke around with some of my cotton swabs here. And what am I doing? I'm looking to see, do I have any built up goop or grease? Who knows what I've got in here? Mostly oil. This machine, by the way, was oiled. I can tell it was oiled in places. The person meant well. They said, oh, I got to oil my machine, keep it lubricated. They were right. And they didn't know. Maybe they didn't have the manual, right? Don't forget, I was able to pull up a manual for this in a PDF on the internet. That wasn't true before the internet, so, try not to be too hard on the prior owners. Maybe they did the best they could. Or maybe they didn't care. Who knows? Maybe the original owner treated it like the magnificent piece of machinery it was. Here I am just taking my little alcohol on a cotton swab and going inside. And I will do the same thing for my hook. Now, I want to show something to you guys. And remember I mentioned when I was doing the video on the side, on the needle compartment, when is it good to leave old oil and when is it not? Well, this is a great place to actually talk about this because we've got several places where each of those statements matter. Okay, right here is a linkage that's connected to, where are you, machine? It is connected to the mechanism that lowers the feed dogs. That's different. The old BU Mira, the one that I use, has it over here. Well, they moved it in this redesign. Okay, now we need to see if it's working or not. Right now, it's questionable. So what do I want to do? This piece up here, notice it's coming in and it's a little sticky, right? Let's see if I can show you guys what I'm actually touching. I know you can't see that. Right here, okay? I'm going to push down. You hear, oh, you hear the little snap? It woke up. Sometimes that'll happen. You won't hear anything and all of a sudden, oh, hello, right? Now, watch this. You see? That should come back and forth on its own, but it's tired and it's full, it's got some old oil inside. But what about the outside? Look at all this sort of funky yellowy gold amber color. This is old oil. Now, when someone was oiling this machine, they did get it right here, right? They needed to have oil put right here in the moving parts. But then someone went and they oiled all in here, right? I mean, there's oil all over the place. And again, this is a matter of aesthetics. This, in my opinion, and the opinion of the people I overhaul machines for, is not of interest to them, for the most part. They don't care. Now, why is it a good thing, right? You don't want it in this moving part, okay? So I need to make sure that this is going to work reliably, right? See, it pops up, and then when I let go, it should be coming down. But remember, you say, well, is this broken? No, I don't believe it's broken. It needs to be lubricated, but so does the rest of the machine. Remember, in another video, and I'm trying to remember which one it was, I talked to you guys about the fact when you start getting into multi-stitch machines, zigzag machines, they're like a symphony orchestra, and all of these parts are interrelated. When you push one, it has impact on other parts. So if the part that it's trying to adjust down here has not been lubricated and is kind of sticky, well, no surprise that this is not going to be able to work. So we don't want to force things. If this had not moved when I pushed on it, I would have left it alone, but it did move, right? So what's going on here? We've got movement, and I'm going to start. I've got my dust out of the way, but I'm not cleaning all this old oil off, right? Why? This is painted. If you have old oil, you want to make sure that you have used penetrants, alcohol, or something where the parts are moving against each other, again, to allow for as little friction and as much power as possible. But if you have oil on the outside of this, it's not hurting anything. It has no impact on the performance of your machine, and it also is a rust inhibitor, right? I'm not saying you should ever go and just go to town and take a machine that's not rusted and start oiling all over the place. All I'm saying is this, in some ways, I have seen machines at times where the old oil and grease protected parts, and other parts that didn't have it got rusted if the machine was exposed to moisture, right? So again, this is really a decision. And again, I'm going to start at the top here, work my way down. There's a little cam follower here, and I believe this is attached to my my feed dogs. And take your time with this, guys. If you're not sure and you have a manual, it should show you where to oil. Okay. Now here is a cam follower, but it's hidden. If I didn't turn this hand wheel, you wouldn't see it. But now that I've got my hand on the hand wheel, here I come down and look at that. See? So I definitely want oil. It is easy to miss some places on a machine of this complexity, and if that happens, just get a copy of the manual. That is very useful. I'm not a stranger to these machines, so it doesn't bother me that I'm doing this without the manual. But if you feel the need for the manual, by all means use it. That's why they were created. And I believe I actually found a service manual for this thing on one of the online boards, which is actually really cool. If you ever have to do things like change your timing or something like that, something that typically it would have been taken into a service center for, then you certainly can. Let's see if did I miss anything? You certainly can use the service manual. It's actually quite useful. Okay, so let's push on this, right? I went click, and then when it comes down, all right, right? So it's up. Now I can turn this knob up here too, and we'll talk later when I operate the machine. We'll talk about why. Why is that there? What use is that? Here's another little, looks like a piece of thread or something in our way. Okay. So we have gotten this to move, right? So I've lowered my feed dogs, and if I want to unlower them, I'll have to look at the manual. I'll go back and look at the manual to see if it wants, see, it's lowered the feed dogs. If you want to raise them again, we'll check out the manual and see that. But this is what I wanted you guys to see. Not just me oiling a machine. It's not the first time you've seen that. But again, if you've got old varnish, as it's called, old oil, and it's not interfering with the performance of the machine, and it's not aesthetic because it's underneath, right? It's not, when you have your beautiful vintage machine out, it's not as if it's, people are going to see it and go, ooh, look at that crappy thing. So, again, it's up to you. Would you like to spend the time to remove it all? You certainly can, and nothing wrong with it. You're not harming anything. You're just giving something very precious, your time. So it really depends. I spend a lot of time on these machines because there's a lot of maintenance that needs to be done to overhaul a machine very often when it's been sitting for years. And that's been the case with the vast majority of my machines. Okay. Occasionally people will bring me something and say, hey, can you kind of go over this and kind of see what it needs? And I have. That typically doesn't take as long or as much money because there's just not as much labor involved. Okay, so now we have a machine that seems to be really happy about moving. All right. And again, you can turn the hand wheel. Why am I turning the hand wheel? I'm turning the hand wheel to see if I missed anything metal moving on metal that maybe I didn't see. And sometimes when you move the hand wheel, you get things that were hiding brought to light. So there you go, guys. It looks varnished and old and greasy, but the quality of this drivetrain is magnificent. The Japanese, when they made their clones, what we would later call clones, did an amazing job because they copied a lot of these designs. Was it exactly the same 100% quality? I don't think so. But it would be hard, I'd be hard pressed to prove it. I believe they got pretty darn close. I'm very impressed with Japanese clones. In fact, I've been tempted to keep one as my own machine before. But again, for the purpose of sewing, if you said, hey, I want a vintage machine and I don't want to pay the price of a Necchi, or maybe I inherited a Japanese clone, do not feel bad. You do not have an inferior machine. You don't have a machine that's not worth keeping. They are incredible. If they're from the vintage era and they're heirloom quality, they're awesome. No matter what brand, whether they were made in Italy, Japan, or wherever. So, one last thing to show you guys, and I think we're done with this little video, and it is this. I think I may have shown this before on some singers. A lot of your throat plates, or in this case we'll call it the bobbin plate, right? They slide, and a lot of times they'll have a clip on the bottom, and that clip slides, and sometimes they're a little rough, right? I've had machines where it's kind of fights you, but not on an Italian machine. My Lord have mercy. Now I want to make sure I don't have any real dirt in here. I'm not even using the alcohol really. Just come in here and make sure there's a little track. You can see the track that this slides on. We'll come up here and make sure we don't have anything that's stuck. I don't think we do, but. And all it takes, 1 or 2 drops on that track, and you're done. You could also use a little dab of grease if you wanted. This is not an area that gets a lot of friction. It's not like a working part of your machine. Now it moves even more beautifully. Okay, guys, that is the underside cleaning and oiling of a Necchi Supernova. And again, if you want to knock yourself out and remove all of the old varnish, you can. I think it's a preservative. It's not aesthetic to me, but you may have a different opinion on that. And if you do, share it down in the comments. It's all good. And we will continue on with the journey of bringing back this this amazing piece of industrial design from the 1950s. Thanks for watching, everyone.